The internet is on fire right now, and the whispers echoing through every corner of social media are darker than anyone expected. People are saying that Tamar Braxton, yes, Tamar Braxton, is sleeping with her own sister Toni Braxton's husband. The audacity, the betrayal, the chaos, it is almost too much to process. Fans are gasping, timelines are flooded, and the Braxton family name is once again drowning in scandal. When the news first dropped, it did not come from a random tabloid or an anonymous leak. No, it came straight from Toni Braxton herself, who, without hesitation, threw Tamar's business right onto the table for the world to dissect. The internet did not even have time to blink before hashtags started trending. Twitter was a war zone. TikTok detectives were connecting dots. Everyone was asking the same haunting question: how could a sister do this? Toni Braxton, the quiet queen who has always carried herself with class, is reportedly shattered. Because it is one thing when other women circle around your man, that is painful, yes, but predictable. Yet when it is your own blood, your own sister, the one who is supposed to guard your heart and protect your peace, that is a wound that cuts deeper than betrayal itself. This is not just drama, this is destruction. And Tamar? She is running wild, trying to defend herself on every platform she can find. Her words are trembling, her tone desperate, like someone watching their world collapse in real time. She never saw this storm coming, that much is clear. But the internet has already made up its mind. Every apology sounds rehearsed. Every explanation feels hollow. And no matter what she says, there is almost no way she can rebuild what she has broken, not with Toni, not with the fans, not with herself. But let us be honest, this is the Braxtons we are talking about. Every time you think they have reached rock bottom, somehow, they dig even deeper. The family that once gave us soul, laughter, and love has turned their story into a public battleground. What is unfolding now is not just a feud, it is a war between sisters. Accusations are flying like knives, and loyalty has become nothing more than a forgotten word. Clips of Tamar and Tawanda's explosive confrontation are now circulating online, replayed millions of times. You can hear the venom in their voices, the years of resentment spilling out like poison. This is not just about one rumor. This is about years of tension, jealousy, and unspoken pain finally bursting into the open. And watching it unfold, you cannot help but wonder, was this family ever truly united? Or were they just pretending for the cameras while the cracks kept spreading behind closed doors? When Tamar Braxton gets angry, the truth starts bleeding out, raw and unfiltered. Her words become weapons, her tone becomes fire, and once she starts talking, there is no stopping her. This time, she came swinging with receipts, not rumors. Tamar claimed she personally paid the down payment on Tawanda's house, that she built the very roof her sister sleeps under. The internet exploded. People started pulling up bankruptcy files, old interviews, even property records. And to make it worse, Tamar went even deeper, accusing Tawanda of secretly using her credit cards for years, spending her money, living her life, all while pretending to be broke. "You have been stealing from me," she screamed, her voice shaking but steady. For years. It was not the first time Tamar had called Tawanda out. Fans remembered the old stories, the ones about Tawanda allegedly cashing their mother's social security checks, even dipping into Toni's money when things got bad. According to official documents, Tawanda's debt once climbed close to $500,000, and she had borrowed $35,000 from Tamar just to secure a home. The numbers do not lie, Tamar's accusations were not wild imagination. They were echoes of a pattern. A pattern of betrayal disguised as family loyalty. But before Tamar could even finish her rant, Tawanda struck back with something far darker. She did not deny the stealing. She did not even flinch. Instead, she dropped a bomb so loud, it silenced the internet for days. Tawanda claimed that Tamar had been stealing too, not money, but men. Her words sliced through the room. Tamar had allegedly slept with one of Toni's exes. The reaction was instant. Tamar lost control. She was screaming, flipping the table, accusing Tawanda of lying, saying she was the one who had been with the man, not Tamar. The chaos was unbearable. But in that storm of shouting and tears, one face stood frozen, Toni Braxton's. Her eyes said everything. Shock. Confusion. Pain. It was as if every word was reopening a wound she did not know still existed. Tawanda had been sitting on this secret for years. She had waited for the perfect moment to weaponize it. And when she finally unleashed it, she knew exactly what she was doing. What makes it even colder? Tracy Braxton allegedly knew too, yet not one of them ever warned Toni. Not one. The Braxtons stopped looking like a family that night. They looked like enemies bound by DNA. And just when everyone thought it could not get worse, it did. Because according to whispers online, it was not just one man. Tamar had allegedly slept with two of Toni's men. The first name Tawanda hinted at was bleeped out in the viral clip, legal reasons, of course. But that did not stop internet detectives. They started digging, analyzing old videos, cross-referencing dates, connecting dots, until one name rose to the surface: Birdman. Toni's current husband. Fans recalled a moment that suddenly felt sinister. During Birdman's versus battle with No Limit, Toni was nowhere to be found. But Tamar? She was front and center, moving through the crowd like she owned the stage, laughing, dancing, and then came the moment no one could unsee. She wiped the sweat from Birdman's face. Gently. Intimately. Like a woman who had every right to be there. The internet lost its mind. Why is she touching him like that? Where is Toni? The backlash was brutal. Tamar tried to play it off, saying she was there to support her sister, even posting a video call with Toni and Birdman to prove everything was fine. But her calmness? Her confidence? It was almost too perfect, like she had rehearsed it. Like she had already lived this moment before. But the truth the internet unearthed next was worse than anyone expected. The man Tamar allegedly slept with, the one Tawanda had really been talking about, was not Birdman at all. It was Carrie Lewis, Toni's ex-husband. The revelation hit like a lightning bolt. Suddenly, all the old rumors people had dismissed years ago came roaring back. Back in 2011, a small gossip blog had whispered that Tamar had crossed the ultimate line, that her hunger for fame and money had pushed her into the arms of her sister's ex. At the time, everyone laughed it off. Tamar was a rising star. Toni was a legend. Who would believe something so cruel? But over the years, tiny fragments of truth began to align. Old photos resurfaced. Cryptic tweets made sense. The puzzle pieces started to form a horrifying picture, not of jealousy, but of obsession. It was not about love. It was about power, control, and the desperate need to be seen. And when fans looked back with fresh eyes, they realized, maybe the signs had been there all along. The internet thought it had already heard the worst of it, but then came the blog post that changed everything. The post did not just accuse Tamar of betrayal. No, it flipped the entire Braxton family dynamic upside down. According to the anonymous insider, it was not only Tamar who crossed the line. Toni Braxton herself had allegedly once been involved with Vince, before passing him along to her younger sister. That claim cracked the story wide open. Suddenly, this was no longer just about infidelity or family drama. It became a twisted saga of recycled lovers, blurred boundaries, and a rivalry that had been quietly rotting beneath the surface for years. Fans went back to old red carpet clips, watching them frame by frame. Those warm hugs between the sisters suddenly looked too stiff. The laughter felt forced. Every silence between them became deafening. What people once saw as sisterly closeness now looked like a decades-long competition disguised as love. And that was not even the half of it. Because this would not be the first time Tamar's name had been dragged into whispers about married men. Years before this scandal exploded, she had already been accused of having an affair with Michael Mauldin, Jermaine Dupri's father, while he was still married. The rumor floated through the music industry like smoke, never confirmed, never denied, but never forgotten either. Tamar was young then, hungry, ambitious, desperate to carve her place in an industry that constantly compared her to her sister. Some said it was not about desire, it was about power. About control. About proving she could have what others told her she could not. And when you line up the stories, one after another, a chilling pattern starts to form. It no longer feels like coincidence. It feels like compulsion. Like Tamar could not help herself from reaching for what was forbidden, especially if it once belonged to someone close to her. Because for Tamar, maybe it was not about betrayal, maybe it was about validation. Every time she stood next to a powerful man, every time she was chosen, admired, or desired, it was like she was rewriting the story of her life, proving to the world, and maybe to herself, that she was just as wanted as Toni. But that confidence the world saw, the bold laugh, the fiery attitude, the unshakable presence, it was only armor. Behind the lashes and the glitter, Tamar was fragile. She grew up in a family where love was a currency and approval was earned. Every smile had strings attached. Every compliment had a price. And when you grow up in that kind of world, being unforgettable becomes your only form of survival. So Tamar became unforgettable, even if it meant being controversial. The public saw the performance, the luxury, the energy, the spotlight. But those who looked closely could see something darker, the cracks beneath the glam. The envy. The exhaustion. The quiet war between sisters that never truly ended. Toni was elegance, timeless, soft, untouchable. Tamar was chaos, fiery, loud, impossible to ignore. And maybe, deep down, that difference was a curse. Because fire does not just light up a room, it burns everything in it. So when Tamar allegedly crossed that line with Carrie Lewis, Toni's ex-husband, it was more than a scandal. It was a message. Sleeping with her sister's ex was not random. It was deliberate. It said, I can take what is yours and make it mine. For Tamar, that may have been the only way to feel equal. To finally stop being Toni's little sister and become her own legend, even if it meant burning down her family's name in the process. Of course, Tamar laughed off the accusations. She always did. She tweeted jokes, posted memes, even used humor as her shield. But no matter how loud she laughed, the tension between her and Toni spoke louder. You could see it in their reality show, the way Toni's expression hardened when Tamar talked too much. The way Tamar's voice cracked when she said she was misunderstood. Those were not TV moments, those were emotional slip-ups, glimpses into years of rivalry, resentment, and heartbreak. And then there was Birdman. The final twist. Toni's mysterious, soft-spoken husband, and Tamar's recurring shadow. Fans still remember that clip, Birdman performing, sweat glistening under the lights, and Tamar stepping forward to wipe it from his face. The crowd laughed nervously, but the internet froze. Because who does that? Who wipes the sweat from their sister's husband like that, smiling, confident, unbothered? When the backlash hit, Tamar played it cool. She said she was just being supportive, that Toni was fine with it, that the internet needed to stop projecting. She even posted a video of herself on FaceTime with Birdman and Toni, smiling, laughing, pretending that everything was perfectly fine. But if you watched closely, you could feel the tension. It was not warmth. It was performance. Damage control disguised as sisterly unity. And that is when the internet turned ruthless. Fans began connecting dots that maybe were never meant to be connected, but by then, it was too late. Every past rumor, every old clip, every strange look between the sisters became evidence. What started as gossip turned into a psychological portrait of fame, envy, and self-destruction. Because when you strip away the glitter and the gossip, this is not just about men or rumors. It is about pain. It is about two women who once loved each other fiercely but lost themselves in the hunger for attention, validation, and survival. The Braxton story stopped being a family drama, it became a tragedy. A reminder that fame may give you everything you want, except peace. Toni Braxton, graceful, poised, always the definition of class, tried to hold her silence through the chaos. When the rumors about Carrie and Tamar resurfaced, she said nothing. No interviews. No statements. Just silence. But that silence spoke louder than any denial ever could. It was not the silence of guilt, it was the silence of someone who had been betrayed too many times to keep fighting. The kind of silence that comes from exhaustion, from realizing that sometimes the deepest wounds are the ones cut by people who once called you family. Tamar, on the other hand, kept pretending that everything was fine. She laughed online, clapped back at haters, and tried to act unbothered, but anyone who looked close enough could see it. The pain in her eyes whenever Toni looked through her instead of at her. Because this was not just about losing a sister, it was about losing the one person whose approval she had spent her entire life chasing. Every tweet, every red carpet smile, every dramatic outburst, it was all a cry to be seen, not by the world, but by Toni. Over the years, the Braxton sisters would patch things up in public, photos, smiles, family dinners, and then, just as quickly, they would fall apart again. Unfollow. Refollow. Unfollow. Their relationship became a soap opera for social media, a cycle of forgiveness and fallout that fans could not look away from. And maybe that was the cruelest part of it all, that their pain had become content. But if you step back and look at Tamar's story, it is not just a scandal, it is a tragedy. It is what happens when ambition turns into addiction, when love becomes rivalry, when the hunger to be seen eats away at your soul. Tamar might never have meant to hurt her sister. But intentions do not erase pain. And when the world calls you selfish, desperate, and disloyal enough times, you start to believe it. You start to live it. By the time the internet moved on to the next celebrity meltdown, the damage was already permanent. People had made up their minds. Tamar was the messy one. The dramatic one. The one who would do anything to stay relevant. Whether the rumors were true or not no longer mattered, what mattered was that the world believed them. And that belief became her new reality. That is the tragedy of Tamar Braxton. She spent her whole life trying to prove she was strong, but in the process, she only showed how deeply she had been hurt. Every post, every defensive comment, every staged smile felt like a performance for forgiveness she never received. Because deep down, she knew the truth, people did not see her as the victim. They saw her as the storm. And when a storm passes, all that remains is wreckage of trust, of friendship, of family. Still, in her own way, Tamar fought back. She said she was misunderstood, that people twist stories to make her the villain because villains sell, and vulnerability does not. And maybe, just maybe, she was right. Maybe the truth is not as dark as the rumors, but not as innocent as the excuses either. Maybe Tamar Braxton is both, the victim and the culprit. A woman molded by fame, punished for wanting love, and trapped in a spotlight that burns hotter than it shines. Because when you strip away the gossip, what is left is heartbreak. Two sisters, one chasing perfection, the other chasing attention, both losing themselves in the noise. The Braxton name that once stood for harmony now echoes with hurt. Their smiles look rehearsed. Their hugs feel heavy. Fame did not just change them, it consumed them. And maybe that is the real story, not about men or money or betrayal, but about what happens when love becomes competition, when every "I'm proud of you" starts sounding like a challenge. Maybe Tamar did it simply because she could. Maybe it was never about power at all, maybe it was about finally feeling equal, even for a moment. But the cruel truth? In trying to prove her strength, Tamar only proved her pain. And now, as the cameras fade and the gossip dies, one thing remains painfully clear: this was never just about fame. It was about family. And somewhere along the way, they lost it. When you look back at how it all began, it almost feels tragic. These were church girls from Maryland, bright, talented, and full of hope, raised under Miss Evelyn's watchful eye, singing harmonies in small churches, dreaming of something bigger. And then one day, Toni Braxton's voice broke through. She became the golden child. Her voice was honey and heartbreak all at once, and the world listened. For the first time, someone from their family had made it. But the moment Toni stepped into the spotlight, a shadow was cast over everyone else. Because while the world celebrated her, her sisters were left clapping from the sidelines, watching their dreams turn into her reality. They loved her, yes, but love can live right beside resentment. And Tamar, she felt that most of all. You could see it in her ambition, in the way she carried herself, in every sharp word that left her mouth. She wanted the same light Toni had, not to steal it, but to prove she could shine on her own. The heartbreaking part? She could have. Tamar had the voice, the charisma, the fire. But somewhere along the way, her hunger for validation became her undoing. Every time she found peace, something shattered: a fight, a rumor, a meltdown. And maybe that is the curse of reality television: it rewards pain. It takes broken families and turns them into entertainment. You cannot heal in front of an audience waiting for you to break again. The Braxtons gave the world their story, but the world only wanted the drama. That is why, at this point, they need peace, not cameras. Because sometimes love means walking away. Sometimes the only way to save your family is to stop performing for it. And then there is Miss Evelyn Braxton. The matriarch. The glue. The one person whose presence still forces them to gather, even if their smiles are fake. She is the anchor holding their chaos together, but deep down, everyone knows, when Missy is gone, the Braxtons will drift apart for good. You can already see it happening: subtle shade online, forgotten birthdays, empty family tables. That is how families die, not with explosions, but with silence. It is tragic, because they had everything they needed to build an empire. The world was rooting for them. They had the talent, the relatability, the humor. They showed the world a version of Black sisterhood that was both messy and magical. But somewhere along the way, jealousy slipped in. Pride grew roots. And every argument became a headline. Every misunderstanding became betrayal. Meanwhile, other families, less talented